With iOS 16 and macOS 13, we did get an update for the navigation API, which a lot of people were looking forward, me included. In another video, I did use the older NavigationView and run into some issues. And as far as I can see, they fixed them by adopting a more flexible approach. You can see here a summary what changed. This is from the WWDC talk of the SwiftUI cookbook for navigation. So we have on the one side previously the navigation view, and in order to change the style, we had to use the navigation view style to stack, which means it's the typical navigation on the iPhone where you just have the main screen and then you push new views on top. So you overlay an overlay. The new API has a specific view for this, which is the navigation stack. The other navigation style is double column or multi-column. This is for macOS and iPadOS, interesting. And for this, we have a separate view, which is navigation split view. In this first tutorial, I want to talk about navigation stacks, and I will also include all the updates for the NavigationLink, because the new navigation API works better also because of these updates, so it goes together. If you previously used NavigationLink with bindings for isActive and selection, these are also deprecated, because now the approach is different to have access to the navigation state in the NavigationStack's path property, so we also look at this. And we have now a split up of the NavigationLink in two different tools. One of them is NavigationLink, which is value based, so you give the type of value this link is active for, is used for. And this position, you don't specify what view is shown for the destination, for the link. For this, we have a different view modifier, which is NavigationDestination. Again, with the value. So there's a link between, basically we have now a value or a type-based navigation. You will see some consequences of this and some limitations. I'm trying to give you a couple of different examples, and I'm trying to really find more limitations and the bugs. I didn't find too many, so this is good. Just some animations that are not ideal, but let's face it, it's still better than before. I also want to go for a little bit more complex navigation with different types and different detail views and multiple detail views in a stack. And for this, we need to talk a little bit about how to define our state for the navigation that we handle with. So this navigation path, a little bit more complex. This is important because it's a lot of the problems that you're facing also previously, where if you didn't take care of this properly, me included. And then sometimes it's just because you have undefined states because you don't have one single source of truth. So we have a look at one possible approach that I found more useful. And then last, I want to talk about state restoration. Unfortunately, this is not as straightforward as I was hoping. It can be done, and I'm going to show you the way they proposed in the sample project. I'm going to show you the approach a little bit modified they used in the WWDC talk. This is using combine and async await together. It's a little bit weird, but it does work. It makes sense. And you can easily use this for your own, so you don't really, even if you don't know it super well, both of these frameworks, you can still make it work for you. So this is good. This is going to be a longer tutorial, so that's why I only start with navigation stacks, and then in the later part we talk about navigation split views, because this is more the universal tool that works everywhere. Let's start by creating a new project. I'm going to use multi-platform because maybe you want to see how this looks like on macOS. Then I need to name this, so this is a navigation stack project. I don't use core data or any unit tests. I'm going to use here an iPhone simulator because this is the main use case. Now, because I wanted to show you different examples, I will use, and I want to include everything in the same project so you can test it easier. The final project will be in the description box and link on my GitHub probably. So I want to have multiple different examples for navigation stacks, which I will embed in a tab view, so you can test everything nicely. And we're going to create 3 different ones. So we have a first tab, second tab, and third tab. Okay, let's just start with the first one. So I can create a new file, SwiftUI view. This is my first tab view. For this, I mainly can use the canvas with the live preview. So we have to be here on the left button in order to see this in action. Okay, the first thing is I want to start with testing all the different navigation links. And we want to use in navigation. One of the problems of you just have too many of these views now that start with navigation. And you already see here there's some with warnings because they're deprecated. So this is NavigationStack. And we have two initializers, one with just a view, and the other one is with this path. So this is this navigation path binding that we look in a minute. So I'm just going for the easier one, just having a view definition. And then here you can now define your main view or the root view of your navigation stack. So this is the root view. And now let's go for NavigationLink. So we have here the new ones with this value, and you see it says hashable. This protocol is we will need to use everywhere for our own custom types too. So keep this in mind. Then we have the title and destination. This is the older one. Same for the destination. They are still working, although we see some limitations of this destination. So we look for the one with the value, so title and value, or value and label. You can also, so this two. And I guess I start with title, key, and value. Don't have some fancy button definitions right now, so this is go to detail. And now you need to give you a value. What does this value mean? It's basically what some of the information you want to show in the detail view. So let's say I have here a string saying show A. Now we have this button on the canvas, and you see I can tap it and it does animate a tap, but nothing happens. This is because you didn't define any destination. You see there's no view here that says what's supposed to show when I press on this button. This is different to before. Old link with destination, and here we directly have the destination view. Old navigation link, because here I define my destination, what is shown. When I press, you see exactly the view that I defined here. But with this new value based, we separate now when this link is actually activated. So this part is the activation of pushing a new view. The second part is a view modifier, which is NavigationDestination for. So this has two different initializers, destination for with value. Here again is hashable value. So you need to define the type for this. And then we have a closure where we can define what destination we show. We also have here one with is presented. So you could also activate one like this. Maybe we just use the for right now because I used the value-based one. And what does it mean here, this value? I need to use the same value type as I defined here. So here I said my value is a string. So this navigation destination is need to be valid for the same type, which is string dot self. So this is the way of saying what type we use. And now in the closure, I do get the value from my value. I get this value. So this is my text value in this case. And I can say detail with value and now show here this value. So now if I press the underscore detail, we should be able to push actually. And indeed we see the view and with the destination that I defined here with detail with value AA. Right now I did put it together, the link with the destination. You have the freedom to, you can do this, but the nice thing is now you have the freedom to not do this. For example, in the case when you have here a lazy view, like say I have a list of my navigation links are on a list which is lazy. This is not a good idea because I'm creating and throwing away these views, and each of these buttons of these links you get its own destination, especially if you have like multiple of these links. Let's say a second one which shows B. So now this button says go to B. And you see it shows me the text, the value that I've defined here. If I go to the other one, it shows me the A. So this navigation destination view modifier is used for all the values with string here. And it's kind of hard to see if you write it like this because it's hidden somewhere in the list, which is lazy. So we should try to, because we have the freedom, put this navigation destination where it's easier for us to understand. So in this case, I probably move it outside of the list. And now it's easier to see, okay, here inside the list I have my links and outside is the destination. Let's make this a little bit more clear by creating a detail view. So I create a new view, detail view. This I'm going to use for all the string values. So I probably have each of these detail gets a different text, which is a string. So now I can here in the preview also say whatever you want. I'm just using here letters because then I can easier see what I actually push. It's just for now. So let's say I can say this is my detail view showing, and I wanted to use this text somewhere. So in this case, we're just going to use the navigation title for this. Okay, this is the new one with the binding, and you can just ignore this. You can also use this here. So we have 2 times. Okay, now I have this navigation, the detail view, and in my first tab view, when I create here this navigation destination, I can use the detail view showing the text value that I got passed here. So this, depending on which link I use, it's either this value or this value. Go to, maybe I'm just going to rename this with A so we see which letter we should see. So we have now this right values here. I already said it's value based or type based, because if you have to write, it's always matching the value of the link to the destination. For example, if you're now changing and saying here, go to number 1, and now I show here an integer. So the link shows up correctly, but it doesn't do anything because the types don't match. The only destination I have is for string, not for integer. You can add as many navigation destinations as you want. So for type, I did have here an integer. So int itself, this is my number, value, text, detail with this number value. Okay, now when I press on the number link, it will use this detail. And you see the detail with this number. And in the case of when I tap on one of the string values, I see the destination with string values. You can add as many as you want to for different types. You cannot have different destinations for the same type, because then it basically, it just doesn't know which one to choose and ignores the second one. You can do the same for your custom types. Then let's just look at the other navigation destination, which is this is presented. So let's say I want to show a settings view, because for settings I don't have a value specifically for this. It's kind of just show this or not. So add state private var show settings, and I say false. And now here I can use this binding, and for the settings view, just for testing, it's supposed to show just so settings. Now I need to actually toggle this property, and for this I can use a simple button, and I'm going to say show settings toggle, and this is, as the label, probably just saying settings. Because I use a button, this looks now different. But one of the things with the list, you always have different types. But the link is still working. So we have this one coming up. So we have now all of these different links. Some of them are old. Maybe I'm just going to create here a different section. Old. So we have this one a little bit different in the list. And this is actually the navigation title, which I'm just going to add down here. Root view. And the thing with the old and the new, they actually don't, or this destination based and the value based links, they don't work very well together. I mean, in this case, you see it kind of seems to be fine. Just trying to demonstrate you one limitation, to not use this too much. So for example, now I have here one old link, and now inside of there, I'm going to use one of the newer ones with the value based. So this is detail, go to, let's say let's say 2. So I'm just going to use here an integer again. Okay, now if I go to this destination, you see here, go to 2. Go to 2. So now it shows me the same link again. But for values, it's actually supposed to show me just a detail with this number. It doesn't, but if you go back, now it shows me the correct detail. when I go back. So it's, yeah, just don't, this is not working. Just saying, don't mix and match too much here. It's either or. Basically, it's probably best to just forget about the destination ones, because you have the possibility to use a normal button with just is presented here for stuff that is old-fashioned, let's say. Okay, now let's do this the proper way of putting more stacks on top. And for this, I need to change something in the detail, because we need to add more links in the detail. So here I can, I don't know, put in a divider and then create more navigation links with title and value. So link to 3. So maybe we'd use 2 different ones, one for the text and one for a letter or a string value. Okay, the buttons are disabled because the preview in this case is not in the navigation view. I need to go back to my root view. So, and I need to go for string value, so A. Now you have these links. If I go to the other one with the text, so now it's pushing more and more on top, and if you go back, you see that the order is indeed still there. Now you saw how to change the navigation stack to put more views on top, or just go back with the back button. But in some cases you want to do programmatic navigation. Like if you want to go back to the root view, you want to just go back directly to the first one, or you want to do deep linking. How do we do this programmatic navigation? And the important thing in this case is to actually get the property that defines the navigation state. I did in the other tutorial about NavigationView talk a lot about state-driven navigation, and we are still in the same, because this is programmatic declarative programming, so we do state-driven navigation. Everything is state-driven, so also navigation is state-driven. And the state, or the property that defines the state, we can actually access from the navigation stack, because that one tracks the state and manipulates the state. So if you want to, we need to ask this one what the state is. This is much nicer to access it from the navigation stack, because this is the one source, this is the one entity that handles all the pushing and popping actually. Previously I had to access the state from the links here, if it's active or not, or from the selection here, which already wasn't really that convenient. It makes much more sense to lift it up to the navigation stack. So I really like this improvement. And the property that we have to look at is the second one here. So I already had the root with the view, and the other one is the path. This is a binding to a navigation path type. So this is actually, navigation path is actually not like well, it's a collection. So it's like an array, like a special array. Or probably more like it's an array, because it needs to have it as sorting. So we have to have here a binding for navigation path. So similar to my other settings here, I'm going to create a state private var path, and you can just create a new one by with the default initialize a navigation path. And now I can use the binding to the root I already have. Okay, nothing changed so far. I basically just now have access to the path. Now I want to see how this builds up. I mean, what is in this path property. And I wanted to show it down here in a small view where we can see what properties we have and what we can manipulate with this path. Because I need to do this whenever I navigate here. I can't put it in the navigation stack, because then I would lose it pushing to the details. So I need to put it outside of the navigation stack. So I tab here and say embed in VStack. So now down here, I guess. So I'm just creating here another VStack. So I can add a background text path. So it shows down here. And when I tap here, you still see this area. So that was why I had to put it outside. Okay. Let's have a look what is in this path. So we have here 5 things. It is codable. Then we have count. This is the one we should actually probably start with. So I'm just going to show this here. This is the number of views on the stack. Or actually it's the number of detail views, because it doesn't count the root view. So when we're on the root view, we don't have any detail views showing. Then you tab on one of your details and you see, oh, it increased to 1. Now you can go to another one and increase to 2. Okay, this detail doesn't have any further one, so I need to use one with the string. So now I am in 2, 3. When you go back, you see this number also decreases. With this, you know how many views you are inside your stack. Then the other ones are for manipulating your navigation stack or your path. I'm going to create here a button. And let's see what the path property has in store. So here it says remove last. So you can basically, when you remove one of these data, what the navigation path is, it's a collection of all the data representation in your navigation stack. So all of these values that I attach here are basically added to my navigation path. Because I have here different values, I have here integers and strings, this has to deal with different types. And what do we do in Swift when we have to do with types? We type arrays. So it's basically using any in this collection. And if you look at the summary, it says the type arrays list of data representing the content of a navigation stack. This is also why we don't actually see the actual values in the path, because they're all any, so they don't allow us to do much with them. But for some of the common tasks, because it's a collection, like removing the last is there. When I remove the last in the data that represents my stack, when I remove the data that represents the last view, I remove the last view from the stack. So this means that in this action results in go back one view. Okay, let's try this. Just navigate a little bit deeper, like 2 levels, and now I can say go back one view. And I indeed go back. This is the same action as if I go here on the back button. So we could use this for creating our own custom back buttons if we want to. How do we do this? In the detail view, you can say navigation back button hidden, navigation bar back button hidden. They're really long now. So this is now hiding the back button, and we have the possibility to now attach our own in the toolbar. So this is toolbar modifier, and I want to just have a toolbar item with placement. I only have one, that's why it's item, not group. We have navigation bar leading. And now here I can create my own back button. Let's say I just want to have a system image. So the default is using this one. Let's say I use the one with the circle. So we see a difference, which means I have to use an image with system name and then use this string value. Okay, it doesn't show in the preview. So I'm wrapping this in navigation stack. So now you see here my little button. Well, actually it's just an image now because it's not tappable. It needs to be a button with action and label. So the label is this image. And here I need to now manipulate my path, which I don't have currently access to in my detail view. So I need to handle this down to my detail view. And because I'm manipulating it in detail view, it needs to be not just a property, it needs to be a binding. So the changes are propagated upwards. So binding var path. This is a navigation path. Okay, let's see where all my errors start to. Okay, and the preview. I use here a constant of navigation path. And in my first tab view, it's also complaining. Yes. Here I need to now give a binding to my path. Okay, I have now the information in my detail view to create my own custom back button. And we can say path.remove last. So I need to go back to my first tab view. To test this, we go to detail, and now you see here my back button. Going back. This is the detail for text, which doesn't have a custom back button, but you see they still animate this nicely. So it fits in with everything else. As you see, it's relatively straightforward to change and create your own back buttons thanks to this path. Okay, let's continue in our investigation for path. We have here an append. You can, for example, append any value. It has to be, this is the same idea as here. So if you want to have a number detail, you need to have this, or if I want to have here my detail view, it needs to be a string value. So let's say I have here G. As an example, this would be anywhere in any of the views. You could say show favorite or show last or the saved ones. So you could now here attach this favorite, which is this G value. You can do the same if you're anywhere in the stack. You can attach now this. And you see I attach the G. So this is the program. This is basically programmatically creating a link. So I could also maybe add this here if you want to. This is the same idea as this. Just going to move it up there because it's an alternative to creating a link. But again, because it's a button, it doesn't have the same styling as NavigationLink when you're on a list, because if it's not a list, then the styling is again different. Okay, and now the most important thing is actually, or the one that was missing previously so much, was popping back to root view. You can, because I said it's path is a collection of our data representing the stack, you can basically what we want to do, like an array, reset it to an empty array. And you can basically set the path to a new navigation path. So this is text, go to root view. So let's try this by going here a couple of levels in and pressing go to root. And you see now the root view. Unfortunately, this is not the expected, I mean, it's kind of doing it. The only thing that I like to have is the animation, because it just showed that there was no animation. I mean, usually you just see the last slide going out and going back to the root view, and here it's just like instantly there. Don't really like this. This is not the behavior that was in UIKit. I don't know, maybe they're going to improve this, and when you try this, it's gone. Just a small bug. I mean, it's kind of okay because I still get all my behavior. As long as I see the right view, I guess it's fine. Let's hope this is going to be fixed. I also tried this in the simulator, it's just the same. Sometimes it's worth to run it in the simulator and not in the preview, but in this case it's just the same. Okay, now we saw all of the manipulation of our little navigation path, which is the collection of all of the data. As an in-between summary, this navigation stacks, we are pushing views, we have one root view, and we are pushing more and more detail views on top. In order to push, so this is these orange arrows, I'm using the navigation link with value. This is the push. The actual detail view, in yellow, is given by the NavigationDestination view modifier. If I want to show different detail views, I need to create different NavigationDestination view modifiers with different types. All of this navigation works on values or types of values and their types, because I'm always mapping here the correct types together. So each of this navigation link with its value goes with one navigation destination with the corresponding value. In order to work with multiple types, we can use this navigation path, which is a type erased collection. Because it's a collection, I'm just highlighting this because I got always confused of navigation path. What is this? But it's a different collection. Like array, just think of it as an array. If you want to use an array of any, then navigation path, you can directly use this. If you have one type, you can just use the type itself. This is the example from the WWDC where I used the recipe type. I'm just going to use this shortly because we can actually see the stack a little bit nicer building up. And also you see an example with a custom type. So this is what I'm going to do in the second tab. The first thing I need to do in order to work with a custom type is obviously creating a custom type. So I'm using here a different group for this because I want to add more later. This is not going to be a very complicated model. So let's say I have a book type. This is a Swift file named book. It's a data type, so it needs to be a struct book. And the one property I'm just simplifying this to now is the name of the book. So this is a string, or the title of this book. Because I'm going to show a list of books, and for each, I'm going to use identifiable, which means now I have to have an ID. So this is a let ID UUID, and I create an initializer, and per default I set the UUID here. And now I'm just creating a small function that creates me a couple of detail example books. This is a static function, examples, that returns an array of books. And I created here 3 books with different titles, so Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and The Shining. Okay, now let's go and create our second tab view where we can use this custom type. So in this second tab group, I'm creating a SwiftUI view, which is second tab view. So first of all, I have to actually have my books to show. So this is books. This is all static. This is now just really default values that I'm using. So this is an array of my books. The other property I wanted to check was the NavigationStack's path. As you saw, we need to create a state property. So this is add state private var path. You could now again use NavigationPath, but because I'm only using one type, I don't need to use this type erased collection here. I can use directly a collection that keeps the type, so an array of books. And in the beginning, I don't have any views selected, so it's an empty array. Maybe I'm going to rename this to book path. This is actually the selected book path. Or you can say selected books, I guess. In the body, I'm going back to my navigation stack with path and root. So the path is now here my selected book path. And here I can show a list with for each of my books. And here for each of my books, I show a navigation link with value, title and value. Book's title and the value is the book itself. Okay, this is now not working. The first error for NavigationStack is not helpful. No exact match in call to initializer. I wanted to show you this specifically so you don't run into the same issues I had and got confused. The navigation link does give you the right information. So here it says requires that book conforms to hashable. Go back to book and add conformance to hashable. It is automatically hashable because the values inside are hashable. So now go back to my second tab view and the errors disappear. I have now here my little list with the links are not working because I didn't define the destinations yet. So let's create a new view with the book destination view. This is just giving a book and adding an example in the preview. Okay, what we're going to show is just a VStack saying book detail view. And as the navigation title, I'm going to use the book's title. And because I want to use a stack with more views inside, I need to add here more links. So I add here a divider and just a couple of navigation links with this value-based. Suggestion 1. And the value needs to be a book title. And I'm just using here the same suggestion name. Okay, let's see how this works together. Going back to the second tab view. Now I still need to actually here attach my navigation destination for book.self book. And here this is my book detail view for this. Now we should have the navigation working. And I can go to the different detail views. Again, I want to show you how the stack builds up. So I'm going to put this below, outside of my navigation stack. Option click on navigation. Command click on navigation, embed in VStack. This is a VStack for each of my selected book paths. So this is now giving me the book. And I'm showing here the book's title. Okay, now when I tab here, you see I get the selected one. The advantage is now you see all of the values that are in your navigation stack. So if you, for example, want to push back to a certain value, you have now the possibility to information. So for example, I can reset the whole path to the first one. So this is, just need to get the first one. First, else, return. And now I can set this book. And then go to favorite. And it goes back to this first tab. You could also, because you have the whole array of books, you can search through that array and then remove all that are behind it, on top of it, until you go to this position. But as you saw, it already does it perfectly fine like this. The main point was really that you see this path or this navigation path is nothing special. You can use it either with the type erasing of navigation path or with your own custom type, which is probably easier because then you actually know what you're dealing with. Now I want to go for a more complex example because the numbers and strings were probably not so interesting. Let's say I have here 3 different sections of books, movies, and songs, and I want to push all different kinds of things on top. So I have 3 different details, and I can just move more of each other on top. So let's do this in the 3rd tab. This is a new file, SwiftUI view, 3rd tab, view. As I said, I want to have the 3 different types, so I'm just quickly creating 2 more types for song and movie. So again, my movie has only one property, which is title. It needs to be identifiable and hashable because we want to use it with NavigationPath. And then I have here 3 examples. For my song, I have more values. We don't really need them. So we have title, artist, and year. Again, it has to be identifiable and hashable. And then for convenience, I have here this example data. Now in my view, because I want to show here a list of all of these, and I want to create more deeper linking, I'm just going to create one observable object that holds all this data. So this is a SwiftUI file. It's an observable object class. So this is model data manager. It could be like where you would get the data from the internet or some stuff, or load it from the file system. So this is class model data manager, conforming to observable object. And I need to have this 3 arrays data types at published var books. This is for now my examples. And the same is for song and movie. Now when I'm in my 3rd tab view, I need this data, so I'm creating an instance of my view model at state object var model data manager, and creating one of these instances. Now I have all the data, and we want to use a NavigationStack view with path and root. So the path, or maybe I just leave out the path, so we can discuss this in a little while. So here I need to create my root view with the list of all these entities. So let's say this is my root view. And it needs to have all the data, so it has to have a observe object var model data of type model data manager. And the same is true for the initializer, so we can create this. For convenience, I'm just going to create here a list with 3 sections. So this is section title songs for each of my model data's songs. And I want to show a navigation link with the value. So showing these songs title and the value is the song. So then one more section for movie. And for each of these movies, I show a link, title and value, 15 movies title, and the value is the movie itself. And then another section for book, where I show the books. And for each of these books, I again show a navigation link, title and the value, the book's title, and the value is the book itself. Okay, this looks quite nice. And I can use this root view in my 3rd tab. So this is the root view, and it needs to have this data. Maybe I'm going to add a title to the root view. So outside of the list, I'm going to create a navigation title root view. Now I have my 3 sections, but no detail views attached. So again, I need to have here my navigation destinations for value. So I had one for book, and I can show the book detail view. So tapping on one of these books gets me there. Before I continue with the other ones, because now I would have a different type here instead of using, because now we are basically for our path using a navigation path with this type erasing. How can we create another way of not getting this type erasing? And that is by creating a super model, a model that encapsulates all the other models. And in this case, because I have here 3 sections, it's an enum. So I'm for now placing this here. So this is my selection state with 3 cases. This is movie, song, and book. And each of these cases actually has an associated value. If I'm in the movie section, I actually have a movie that I want to attach. So this is movie or song or book. You can also have a case of settings. Actually didn't use this, maybe I can. And the root view, add another button, or actually it's a navigation link. So this is settings. And the value, because previously we had this problem of settings doesn't have a value. I don't have anything that I want to pass. But because I'm changing to my own custom type, is the selection type. I'm passing the selection state settings value here. And it actually already tells me that I have to make this hashable. So let's add conformance to hashable. So my root view, this is now not complaining anymore. And I have here my nice settings button. Because I want to use this kind of navigation now. Also my values have to change. So books become navigation states books with this book encapsulated, movie with this movie encapsulated, and song case with this song attached. Okay, now going back to my third tab view. The destinations, if I want to use these ones, now have to be changed because now it doesn't work anymore. So I have to go for navigation state. Now this is not a book anymore, it's the state. And because it's an enum, I can use a switch case. Switch state case dot song let song case dot movie let movie case dot book let book and case dot settings. I don't have any views, detail views for this. I could use one of these. I need to create here detail views for song, movie, and settings. So let's just quickly create them. Song detail view. If you don't want to do this yourself, you can just use the examples that I created and use the files from my GitHub repository. Okay, now I have this song detail view. Then a settings view that just shows settings. I could use the book destination view for the detail, but here the value is book type and I want to use a different one. So let's just create another book detail view. Actually, I probably should rename this one. So we can basically use everything the same, except the value needs to be now my selection state for book and then giving whatever book I wanted to show here. Okay, it's still not building because my root view, because my third tab view is broken. Okay, let's just add here my song detail view for song, my movie, my book detail view, and my settings view. And I forgot to add a movie detail view. So I'm going to create another one. Probably should have added all the movie details before I change something. Okay, just showing here what view we have, the detail for movie and the movie's title. Now I have all my detail views. So this is the movie detail view for movie. So this already looks nice and clean because here I have this navigation stack and one root view. So this is the main view you see on the right. And I have separately now the definition or set what detail views I want to show. So one advantage of this navigation destination modifier, much more clean and organized. Maybe I'm going to, I should change the settings to put it up here with this gear icon. You can try and all of them are working. Right now I didn't. I only added more details for the book suggestion. You could also add more links for, let's say, songs. And in this case, I probably should just use the data that I have here in my model manager. So in the song detail view, I can also add a divider text, something like people also liked. And now I want to show some of the list of all the other songs. Okay, I only have 3. You could probably fetch different ones. They are on my model here, and I want to simply, because I probably need them everywhere, prefer to have this in the environment. So this is environment object, model manager. And now I can use this in my song detail. So by accessing it from the environment object var model data, this is of type model manager. Preview will crash unless I add an instance of this type, model manager. That's all the data. And now I can use here for each of my model data songs. You could also link different things. So adding here navigation link with value and title, so song. For example, if you want to have different ones, add a song icon. Music. So this is the label with the song's title, and the system image is the node. Probably put this in a VStack with leading alignment and also the title together. Okay, now we have a little bit more navigation building up. Okay, we have a crash. So these kind of things don't usually work very well. Kind of on purpose showed you this. So in order to run this in the simulator, I actually need to add this to the simulator. I didn't do that so far. So in my content view, I will now add this tab view that I was talking about the whole time and never actually did. So I want to have my first tab view, my second tab view, and my third tab view. And then adding here tab items, just with a random icon. Same for the other 2. Okay, this is the typical way of using this. Okay, finally, let's run this. Go my third tab, press on one of the songs. Okay, fatal error, good. This is now the information. This gives me actually some information what I did wrong. So the environment model data manager was not found. So my song detail view doesn't have this in the environment. Now I'm going to check where I created an instance of my song detail view. This was in the third tab view. Here is the navigation destination, song detail view. I did add this environment object afterwards, thinking probably getting it everywhere, but it doesn't. You need to, if you put it afterwards, it just doesn't get it. So just a little hint for the navigation destination modifier. You need to attach this here too. So let's just create a group because I need to do this. It's probably more common to add this to all views that are in there. Okay, so I'm wrapping my switch case here in a group. So this view modifier is then added to all of my views inside. It hopefully means that everything is working now. Going to my third tab. And yes, we have the detail and I actually see all the songs. Does not work. Okay. At least now the information seems to be useful. A link is presenting a value of type song, but there is no matching navigation destination declared visible for the location of the link. And it also tells you how they are actually looking for this navigation destination things. So they're first looking in the surrounding navigation stack, so they're going the view tree up. And if they don't find anything there, they are looking in the navigation split view. This is possible, you can stack them inside of each other. Okay, let's see what I did in the song detail view. Actually I used the song value, not my new selection value. So thank you for the very informative help. Not this weird, you have to interpret language. This was in a very clear language. Nice. Okay, try again. Okay, now everything seems to work. Okay, so make sure you're putting it, you need to add all the environment objects again in the navigation destinations. I'm not even sure if it's the environment values too. Like if you change the environment value for color scheme, dark. Okay, this is dark. Okay, yeah, it's the same for all the colors and stuff. Not really sure, this is kind of annoying. Maybe if I put it outside. Okay, so you have to put it outside of the stack, and let's see if this is also working for the navigation state, for environment objects. Yes, so really make sure where you put the environment properties at the most highest level around the navigation stack, so all of the elements get this. And now I can actually remove the group again. So it's much more clean and I don't need to add this multiple times. Adding the programmatic navigation again, I would need to go here and access my path property because I want to handle this downwards to all my detail views. And I don't really want to, pass this manually with bindings everywhere. I will use the same trick of a observable object and then adding it in the environment, which means I need to create another view model for the navigation state. And this is Swift file. It's always difficult to name this navigation state manager. I probably have to rename stuff. And if you want, you can also create another for your view models here. So this is a class conforming to observable object. And the property that I want to store is actually defined with the selection state. So I'm also moving that over there, or maybe in a separate file. So here, this is at published var, selection, path, and this is now an array of, it's a collection, or the path is a collection of my states, and they're all represented by the same type, which is my selection state. So this is it. And now I can use this here again as a state object of our navigation state manager instance, and I can give a binding in my navigation stack to my navigation state manager's selection path. Okay, same, I want to add this here in the environment. So I add the environment object for navigation state manager. And now we can use this anywhere in one of our detail views. So here in the song detail view, I can add another button. Okay, first I actually need to grab this environment object. Environment object var navigation of type navigation state manager, and don't forget to add this to the preview. Okay, so text. This is, for example, interesting for go to root, or if you're done or something. Now we could use the navigation state manager and manipulate the selection path directly. But because this is probably an action that I would perform a lot and I don't always remember how I'm supposed to do this, you can create here little functions like pop to root. So doing this is basically resetting this whole array. So I'm just throwing away all the detail informations by resetting this to an empty array. And now my detail becomes a pop to root function. Okay, let's try this in the third tab. I go to one of my details, and now I can press here go to root, and we are going back to the root view. We can also use this for deep linking. Let's say we have here a small button for settings that will bring us to the settings view. Okay, maybe I'm starting to get a little bit crowded in this view, but let's add here a toolbar. Oh no, I don't want to have displacement and visibility. The placement you can also put it on the bottom bar. This is new. Toolbar, no, that was not what I wanted. As the icon, I'm using here gear. Okay, and I need to embed this actually in navigation stack, so you have something in the preview. Okay, now I have this icon there. Okay, one of the things is this toolbar is always like, where is it going? You could use the navigation bar trailing. This is not working for macOS. Primary action. Okay, it's on the right side. And now I can say, if I press on this gear icon, I actually want to change my navigation state to go to the settings view. Okay, maybe let's create another function for this. So what do we want to do? Function go to settings. So my selection path has to change, and I don't want to push it on top, so I could if you want to put it on top, I would append this new element, but I actually want to replace the whole path with the selection state dot settings. So now here I can say go to settings. Okay, let's try this. I go here and I press on my gear icon. And we are in the settings view. Unfortunately, you see, okay, maybe you don't see it, but there is still some remaining thing that I don't like, which is this which is the title for my previous one. Try again. So if you select the view, you have the navigation title from the song view. And now I press on the settings. It does update the main content, but it just doesn't update the navigation title. And the way to fix this is that in my settings data view, I actually never set the navigation title. So the bare minimum you have to do is to clean the navigation title. I'm basically setting it here to empty, or you set it to a new value. This is so far a small bug. Try again. I go to one of my song details and then I go to the settings view, and now my old title is updated to the empty one. This deep linking works quite fine. You can go wherever you want. The nice thing also about this navigation state manager here is you can add functionality to keep track of all the all the instances that the user looked at all the songs and movies. So you could create a history timeline of what did you look on before, by just keep track of them, collecting them. Or you can then go back to the previous ones, for example. Do some undo, redo with going back and forth in your navigation stack. I prefer to have this enum for all the selections. It makes it a little bit more easy to go around and also deal with situations where you don't actually have a value, because then you need to otherwise you need to make up for one, and I don't like that. Lastly, I want to talk about state restoration, because now every time I launch, I will go back to the old state, and I want to let the user be able to resume at the same state, at the same selection in the path. And what we can do is user defaults, and more specific the scene phase, because the scene phase stores it in the user default. That makes it easy to store properties in there. If you have a navigation path, where did I have a navigation path? Here. I had a navigation path. I really would have liked to simply say scene storage path. That would have been very convenient. But this is not working because scene storage doesn't allow you to use this type. Scene storage only supports certain types, and the values that you can use is bool, integer, double, string, a URL, and data. It basically needs to be raw representable. So we cannot directly save the navigation path like this. We need to first transform it to a data and then save it in the scene storage. I'm not going to do this here. I'm just going to do this for a custom type. So we can use a scene storage, giving it a user default name, navigation state, or navigation state data. This is a data type optional because we might not have anything. Right now, my state is in the navigation state manager. So I would want to save this path as a data to user defaults. In order to do this, I need to decode and encode this to data. So I'm conforming here to codable. It's going to complain because all of the subtypes need to also be codable. So I need to make my movie, song, and book also codable. I can just simply add here conformance to this, 3 types. And then I go back to my selection state enum, which is now codable. So how do I create a data thingy from the selection path? Just going to use the easy back and forth conversion trick from the WWDC, from the Apple project. So we're using a property with a getter and a setter, and in the getter and the setter we can transform data back and forth. So this is my data representation. This is a data optional. So I said we need a get and a set. So in the getter we need to create a data from our selection path. So I have to have a JSON encoder to encode my selection path, and this might actually fail, or this might throw an error, so I'm just omitting here the errors. Try. And when I set this, I get the data that I need to then decode. So JSON decoder decode And the type that I need to decode is this array of selection state from the new value, which is optional. So I only should do this if I have something. So this is guard let data equal new value, else return. Now I can use this to decode. And I try. This is a path, because I said here it's try. I might not actually have something. And I forgot to say here this is what type. I actually want to now set this to my selection path, but only if I have something. So I'm also adding it here to my guard statement. So if I cannot do anything with this, then I'm not. Otherwise, I set my selection path to the decoded one. I'm doing it a little bit different from the WWDC example, from the official example, from the Apple example, because there they actually saved the whole navigation state manager properties. Maybe you have multiple in here. And I'm also saving all of the data. So I'm saving the movie, songs, and books that are on the stack. And I set them all in case this data gets stale. So some updates have been done to the songs that are in this array. Next time I'm loading, I want to actually use the newer updated versions. So one way of doing this is not saving everything. Or you can, instead of setting here the selected path before fetch updated new model data for each ID. So you can use the ID because that should not have changed to fetch the new ones and then set the path from there. This setter should actually only be called once during launch. So this is when we launch, we want to set our selection state once, but we need to decode this. We need to create the data multiple times because every time our selection path changes, we want to save it as a data in user defaults and with scene storage. So I need to know when the selection path changes. So there's the way they did it in the sample project is using a combination of combine and async await. And this is a little bit more difficult it really depends if you want to use it. It does work. So because we want to know when the whole, for me, I have an alternative, but if you save the whole selection state manager, we need to know when this changes. So this is in the object will change publisher, and we need to create a async publisher for this. Object will change sequence. The types the types are interesting, but this is normal. So what we want to have is an async publisher. Okay, so for what I want to use is the object will change publisher because it's the one where my view model changes. So every time this is triggered, I know something changed and then I can save my data again. So this is in the object will change. And in order to transform this to something async, so you see this is a newer feature which is async publisher, although it's probably already there for 2 versions. So values, I was going to complain because types don't match. Yes, because this is returning an async publisher, and self is the one that was before. Just trying to figure out how this. So this is a object. Maybe I just should have copied everything. Object will change publisher, and it doesn't know this because I need to import combine. Should have known that this is the most important thing. Always forget to import combine. Okay. This is now a sequence of all of the previous values, but usually when you attach this, you only want to have the recent one. So they used buffer of 1, so they just want to have the last one, keep by request, and then a full drop oldest. And now the types don't match again, so this is now, I'm just going to copy the type from the error. Okay, now we have this object will change sequence and can use the task modifier, that was the whole point. Because the task modifier is connected to the lifecycle of this view. So whenever we have this root view or this third tab view, it will perform this as long as it's there. So even every time I push, this is alive. And the first thing I wanted to do is I have here my data. The first time I'm launching, I want to take my data and set this to my navigation state. So I need to take it from here, from the scene storage, and place it in my state manager. So this is my navigation state manager's data property, and I'm setting the saved navigation state data there. You can also, if this is null like the first time, this is not a problem because then it runs here the setter. This is when I set this, and if it's null, then it doesn't continue, and I'm not going to set my selection path here. Okay, this is the first time. This is free set during launch. And now every time and the other way around, because I never actually set this data here, I need to get the updates from my navigation state manager, the navigation state managers, and now I can use this object will change sequence. This is a sequence. I don't know much about async await, so please don't expect a good explanation from me now. But it's because it's await, we need to use the await keyword. This is a sequence. We don't really care about what values are there. We just want to execute and say our navigation state data is now coming from the state manager's data. So this is save state to user defaults. My app doesn't really do everything correctly because I have, here I have this tab view with everything in. So let's just test this by itself. If I only have this third tab view in my app, so instead of the content view, I use here my third tab view, so we can test this and launch. We need to launch it a couple of times to see. Okay, so this is the root view. I need to go somewhere in one of my stacks. Okay, so I navigated 2 levels deep. Now I close. This is for the user defaults to work properly. Otherwise, it needs a little bit it doesn't always save them. When I launch again, I'm in the same state, which is this 2 levels deep. You can also test this by going into a different one, settings, and then launch again. And now we go back to settings. So this is working fine with this task modifier. Alternatively, if you don't want to use the task, you can use, because in my case, I have the possibility because I only store one property anyway. So in case of on receive of my navigation state manager selected path. Okay, I need to have, this is with a publisher, so the $sign needs to be in front of the selection path. So this is now the updated path. Actually, I don't really need this because I had this convenience function. So in my navigation state manager's data, I can store this to my navigation data. So this is the save state to user defaults thing. So this is the saving and then restore during launch. We can use on appear. So during on appear, I want to use the navigation state, the navigation data, and reset this to my navigation manager's data. So this is the restore during launch. The one problem with this is I don't really want to save the very first element because this is the empty one. So I can use here drop first and we can try. Okay, so we are going back to the original settings. And now I can navigate to one of the deeper levels. I leave, we're trying the same. And we go back to this level. I also want to make sure that I'm going correctly to the root view if I'm there. So I leave now. And I'm indeed on the root view. So you can do this 2 ways, as you see, the fancy async away combine way, or here with the with only combine, where I use 2 separate things. One time the on receive to get the updates from the selection path. This works because I really only have one property that I actually care about. If you have multiple things, you need to use, you can still use the $object will change. The object will change publisher because I'm actually not using this thing. So this is also working. Okay, so you have, and you can use this one if you have multiple properties that you need to save, or in my case, I really have only one, but I guess maybe should leave it this way because it's the most cleanest and future-proof way. So this is it for NavigationStack. We looked at navigation links, how to create a programmatic navigation, NavigationPath, NavigationDestination, and how to do state restoration. If you want to see more, for example, about navigation split view, I'm going to link that video here, so go watch that if you are interested, because navigation split view covers it all. It's obviously more interesting if you want to go for iPad or macOS. So go watch that if you're interested. Give this video a like and subscribe. Until next time, happy coding.